Welcome back. Good to be back with you here on the only show that's dedicated to those teams that are less thought of, that are usually given not so much of a chance, probably the road team in a lot of cases. It is Three Dog Thursday as we love talking college football and the underdogs. I am merely the somewhat competent host, TJ Rives, and it is my pleasure to have him back. We've been trying to work this out. I rolled the red carpet out. I said, what do I got to do? I have to do surf and turf dinner? What do I have to do? Put the bat signal up. Here he is, my guest this week, senior handicapper, Vegas insider, MajorWager.com. You and I have done this once or twice over the last 4 or 5 years. Thank you so much, Brian Edwards, for always being willing to come on with me. How you feeling, Brian Edwards, as we get ready for another week? I can't believe it's the last weekend in October. We're headed for the stretch run. How you feeling?
It's flying by, that's for sure. I would love to brag on have my Falcons beating your Bucks, but I had the Bucks, and I want Arthur Smith fired so bad I can taste it, and so I was actually kind of rooting for you for the most part.
It's known as the mother-in-law over the cliff in the new Ferrari analogy, right? On sports, although I love my mother-in-law. But yeah, do you want him to be there? And we're going to talk about this with Billy Napier and your Gators against Georgia coming up too, on whether you like that. So the NFL was not kind to me or your pocketbook or whatever, but find Brian's picks, VegasInsider.com. He's a senior handicapper, also MajorWager.com. And we'll tell you a little more about where else you can see him. But I love having him on the program. By the way, if you're only hearing us on the podcast, once more, we've said this all year, we're now partnered with Winning Cures Everything, my man Gary Seegers. Come to the platforms. Gary does a fantastic job, Brian. You know this. Come to the platforms, winningcureseverything.com, Winning Cures, the YouTube page, and see the show. If you are seeing us, thank you for finding us. The audience continues to be solid, and we love that here on Three Dog Thursday. We're here every Thursday, obviously, going over the different games. Very interesting for this week. The host 2-1 last week. Thank you to the Houston Cougars. It did not start well, Gary, down 21-0 early, getting a ton of points, but it turned out a ton of points is what you needed. Holgerson's team rallied with Donovan Smith, the dual threat quarterback. They stayed in the game. Nice cover there. And I'm going to go back later in the program to an underdog last week in Colorado State. I'm already tipping that. They hung in with UNLV. Navy was the only one that cost me last week, and we'll get into that in a few minutes as well. Navy looked like they were still going to be in good shape late in that Commander-in-Chief's game with Air Force. We'll talk more about Air Force and Colorado State in a little bit. There's by way of a tease. So now the host, Brian, you'll be proud of me. I listen to your advice. I keep doing well in the show. The host at this stage is 7-3-2. 7 wins, 3 losses, 2 pushes in the last 4 episodes of the show. You're making money if you're with us here on Three Dog Thursday. With that being said, I always bow to you. I bow to your insight. Let's begin. What is underdog number 1? Where is it and why is it for Three Dog Thursday?
Maction and your loyal listeners will probably be reminded of my affinity. I've even called them my side squad before. I've called Chris Creighton the underdog king in Eastern Michigan as a 3-point home underdog to Western Michigan this week, and I just have no idea why, which is kind of scary. But I thought the same thing last week when they were catching 12.5 to Northern Illinois, because Creighton does not talk about injuries. And so to get injury intel on EMU, the Eagles, is very difficult. But I mean, I went through the box score. It didn't look like any of their key players, like skill players, missed any playing time or anything last week. So I'm going Eastern Michigan +3. So they've won back-to-back games. At home they've won back-to-back games against Ball State and Kent State, winning by 14 both times. Then they went on the road to Northern Illinois. Tie game late. Northern Illinois gets a late score, and but EMU gets to the window or cashes the ticket for us as anywhere from 12 to 12.5 point underdog, and lose by 7. Now the Eagles are undefeated in 4 home games this year. They've won 4 in a row over Western Michigan, including on the road in Kalamazoo last year, 45-23. They're on a 5-0 against the spread run in this rivalry, winning the last 4 outright, but covering 5 in a row. In their last 50 since the 2015 regular season finale as an underdog, they're 39-10-1 ATS. Their last 13 as home underdogs. They're 8-4-1 ATS. And
Wow.
Western Michigan has lost 3 in a row and 6 of 7. They're 2-6 straight up. Now they have been covering some numbers as underdogs, but now they're favored here. And one of their wins is over an FCS team. So they're 1-6 against FBS opponents. Their lone win over Ball State, and yet they're favored on the road. And I don't understand why. So let's go Eastern Michigan to win outright against the Broncos.
I again, we talk all the time about it. Wrong team favorite. It certainly seems that way, especially with those numbers. Again, what did you say? Last 50 games, 39 times as an underdog they've covered. That's quite a sample size, a massive sample size over many years, different sets of players, different coaching staffs even. But Austin Smith can throw it a little bit. He's already thrown for 1,000 yards. I loved this game. I was like off the air with you going, we're taking Eastern Michigan, aren't we? As an underdog. Yes. Seems to be a gift. This is a 1 Eastern time MAC game on Saturday. Again, we disclaim to the audience, I do this a couple of times every show. If that line goes up or comes down, we're getting them at 3. Midweek as we tape 3 Dog Thursday. Brian and I don't know if there's updates on the lines after really Wednesday night when we're putting this together. So right now the number's 3. We'll take Eastern Michigan and the 3, you and I together. So we share together. I've learned from you. We share together on Eastern Michigan and this matchup with the Broncos of Western Michigan in the MAC for game number 1. So if we like that one together, go back to another one. Go for your second one that you like. We're now going to differ for the audience. We're going to differ on these next 2 picks, he and I. So where do you want to go second here? And are you looking west?
Yeah, let's go to Salt Lake City, where I like Utah +7. You know, if like you were just noting with potential line moves as the week goes on, if your number's 6.5, I'd buy the half point to 7. But look, I think Utah's going to win outright. So they have won 18 games in a row at home. They have not lost since the season opener of the COVID year 2020 against USC. They're undefeated, obviously. Well, they've won 18 in a row at home. So they're 3-1 against the spread in their 4 home games this year. They've won by margins of 27, 24, and 13. And their lone non-cover at home was when they were favored by 27. Yeah, they were in control of that game with USC pretty much the whole way. USC got back in it with a pick 6 and was able to take the lead kind of, thanks to a 61-yard punt return there late. But, Utah, USC got a pick 6, so you could subtract 7 from their 32-point score to 25, and then 61 yards. Then it made an 11-yard touchdown drive. So Utah probably is one of the best offenses in the country. Their defense was outstanding as always. They went on a walk-off field goal. And look, Bryson Barnes played good last week. Ran for a touchdown.
Yes, he did.
3 now. Obviously, the pick 6 was the outlier, but other than that mistake, he had a 26-yard scramble with 16 seconds left to set up the game-winning field goal. And look, Utah, they're in revenge mode here. They lost 20-17 at Oregon last year. But, these dynamic offenses that Oregon's had here they've had a dynamic offense for, more than a decade, going back to Chip Kelly. But the last 3 times they faced Utah, they've been held to 20, 7, and 10. So Utah, one of the best defenses in the country. And I just think Oregon's played a soft schedule. They've been favored by 19.5 or more in 5 of 7 games. The outliers were at Texas Tech, where they got very fortunate to win, and a misleading final. And they lose at Washington. So the Utes at home, they're 6-3 against the spread, 4 outright wins. Their last 9 as a underdog, not just home underdog, just any underdog role. And I like Utah. And again, back to the, whether the line moves, I like Utah to win outright and get a little taste of the money line in the, plus 220 neighborhood, as I think they continue their winning streak.
It really surprises me that line is that big midweek. I would have thought like field goal. I rely on you guys. I rely on the odds makers to know much more about this. And you can't say enough about Winningham staying there. Remember now, we talk about this all the time, Brian, when Urban Meyer left in the early 2000s to come to the University of Florida, the mid 2000s, Kyle Winningham has stayed there and has built essentially a powerhouse in the Mormon region there on what they've been able to do. They were in the Rose Bowl a year ago. I know they got wiped out in the Rose Bowl. Here's a good one. You love this because we're going to talk Florida, Georgia in just a second. Has Utah been, as somebody pointed out this week, a couple of somebody's pointed out, is Utah now for Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner, like the modern day Tennessee problems with Florida for Peyton Manning, where the Gators just owned Peyton Manning and he could never beat them. Because now here we go again. This is 3 straight losses to Utah going back to the Pac-12 championship game. I knew I'd put a smile on your face. What do you make? Is this like Peyton against your Gators? For all time, Caleb Williams can't get by him for whatever reason.
Yeah, unless Caleb, doesn't like who gets the number 1 pick and wants to come back to college, he is joining Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning's 0 for lifeness against the Gators and being 0 for life against Utah.
What was Spurrier's line? You can't spell citrus for citrus without UT for Peyton Manning as the running up. A lot of people have just raised the idea. A couple people raised the idea that Caleb Williams should shut it down for the rest of the year. I don't buy that. When you're the quarterback, you're the leader at USC, you still have things to play for. You potentially have a Rose Bowl still to play for, possibly, if you can continue to win. I don't buy that. I see you shaking your head no as well.
I just despise that type of mentality. I mean, just quit on your teammates and before the month of October is over. And look, I don't think USC is going to get the Pac-12 championship game, but the Pac-12 could beat each other up. I mean, everybody's good with the exception. Well, ASU had Washington on the ropes.
Yes, they did.
The road. I think we'll get to Colorado in a minute. So, I mean, yeah, pretty much. Most everybody in the Pac-12 is pretty darn good.
Everybody's only got one loss. A bunch of teams have only got one loss, and Washington's the only unbeaten team, so it's not over yet. I get it. If they falter 2 or 3 more times, a couple more times, and they've got 4 losses and they're in a bad bowl game, I would get the new mentality of I'm not going to play in the bowl game and risk it if it's not a college.
Game, sure.
We get that. But to shut it down mid-year makes no sense whatsoever. I love the insight of Brian Edwards. Brian, stand by for just a second because we're going to talk the don't call it the cocktail party game, Florida and Georgia, in just a second. And by the way, if you're trying to go to that game, one of our sponsors is Ticket Smarter, the Ticket Smarter mobile app. You've got a chance to get into that game in Jacksonville with us right now. The get-in price, still over $100 for the upper level seats at TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville. The better seats are all $300, $400. Use our sponsor, Ticket Smarter, the Ticket Smarter mobile app, ticketsmarter.com. Use the promo code WCE10, WCE and the number of 10. Take $10 off any order of $100 or thereabouts, but get a double bonus. Take $20 off an order of $300 or more. Use WCE20. Take $20 off your order of an order of $300 or more with Ticket Smarter to any of these games. If you're interested in the Wisconsin-Ohio State game that we'll briefly mention later in the show at Camp Randall Stadium, use the promo code WCE20. Takes $20 off your offer. The Big 12, the SEC. I'll be at the ACC game, Clemson, NC State. First mention of that on national radio. Carter Finley Stadium will probably be rocking still in Raleigh, even though Clemson's lost some games. They've really owned NC State. This is a Wolfpack home game. It'll probably be a raucous atmosphere. Use the promo code WCE10 for $10 off an order of $100. WCE20 for an order of $300 or more. Whether you're going to that Utah-Oregon game, pick one for any of these different games. Use Ticket Smarter and the Ticket Smarter mobile app. They are sponsors here on Winning Cures and also on Three Dog Thursday. Think smarter, get in the game with Ticket Smarter and the promo code WCE20. All right, so I am looking at the don't call it the cocktail party game. Both teams off the bye. Are the Gator, I've talked to so many Gators, and I get the feeling you're kind of in this mentality too. Billy Napier's done some good things. They've won some games, but the most valuable games are games like the Tennessee game, which he's already won, this Georgia game, and the Florida State game. If you're a Gator, before we handicap it, how in are you on Billy Napier keeping it close or winning this game if you don't believe he's the guy? What say you, Brian?
Well, I think more than anything, it's just the fact that Georgia has not been very impressive this season outside of the second half against South Carolina and the Kentucky game. But I think we can dock them a few points for the Kentucky performance and the way Missouri handled Kentucky at Kentucky, especially after being in a 14-0 hole early. So, yeah, I think Florida can hang around. Now, I haven't played them yet, but, we're still pretty early in the week. I kind of just wanted to watch the line. I kind of think the line's going to just end up at 14 and not float up toward, 17. That's kind of my thinking right now. As long as you're getting at least 14, I have a small opinion on Florida. Now, if it were to drift up to 16, 17, obviously I'd like it a little more. But so Napier's been really good as an underdog during his head coaching career. So let's see, this year he is a 1-2.
They did cover against Georgia while you're looking for that. They covered a year ago in this game.
Yes.
They did not cover 2 years ago in his in the last 2 games. That game was a Dan Mullen game 2 years ago. They did cover last year. Georgia does have 3 covers in the last 5 meetings in this matchup while you look for that stuff. But you saying Napier's been decent as a doggy, including we were on him on 3 Dog Thursday on this show for the Tennessee game. I thought it was a gift that they were getting that many points against Tennessee. I said over and over again, you'd be proud of me. I'd been listening to you and others. They could win this game outright, and they did against Tennessee. Thought one more time on them as an underdog.
Okay, yeah. So now because the South Carolina game 2 weeks ago ended up closing pick'em, so I guess we're not going to credit him for an underdog win there. So now he is 18-7-1 against the spread with 11 outright wins in his career as a head coach, as an underdog. So yeah, really good underdog history. And I mean, you could maybe credit him one for the South Carolina because they were underdogs most of that week. I think it got to pick them, in the hour or two before game time. But more than anything, it's just fading Georgia. I mean, Bowers is out, and they just have not seemingly had that same fire, really anything resembling the last. Now, they obviously haven't lost yet, but I mean, the schedule's been pretty soft.
Only 2-5 ATS. And how much does Brock Bowers really mean in terms of a line movement or whatever? The line is 14.5. I will take all those points. Florida can run the ball some. Half the stadium is orange and blue. Half the stadium is black and red for Georgia. It's quite the atmosphere. Again, I went against them with the Kentucky game at Athens. That was a mistake. That's the one game that Georgia's played really well, beginning to end over the last stretch here. I still will go back at them with Florida. That is a 3:30 CBS game, 3:30 Eastern time. The last time, by the way, that after 20 plus years of usually doing this game, CBS will no longer have the SEC rights and will no longer have this game. So it's kind of a farewell. Same thing with Alabama, Tennessee last week. Hard to believe that's been on CBS, it seems like, since the Ronald Reagan administration, and yet it's not going to be there anymore. It's going to be only on ESPN and ABC from here on out. So I'll take Florida in that one. 2 more underdogs to go. You're hearing the voice of Brian Edwards with me, TJ Rives, on the podcast, on the 3 Dog Thursday podcast. Come find us on Winning Cures Everything's website and platforms, winningcureseverything.com, the Winning Cures YouTube page. We do underdogs exclusively on this show, but Gary's got such great content with all the previews. You get over a dozen games that he handicaps, gives you great insight on winningcureseverything.com. We love him for that, and we thank him for making us kind of available. Like we have the extra room here on Winning Cures Everything that we hang out in his pad. We love that. Kind of like college bachelors. All right, let's continue. You're going there. Off a bye week. It's Colorado going there to the Rose Bowl with UCLA. What stands out for Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and company getting a lot of points against a UCLA team that looked really good against Stanford last week? They've had some ups and downs. What are your thoughts here? Is it too many points? Is that why, Brian Edwards, you're looking the way of the Buffaloes?
Yeah, I think it's too many. In fact, I made it 11, and it's 17.
Wow.
That just it seems like a bargain because, look, I'm not implying UCLA is going to get ahead of the number, but if they do, I mean, the back door can always be open with Shedeur Sanders, making plays. UCLA has only been a double-digit home favorite once this year. They failed to cover against Coastal Carolina. Colorado's been a double-digit dog twice, going 2-1 ATS with 1 outright win at TCU. Obviously, they had a dud at Oregon, but then they got the money pretty easily against USC. And I think everybody in America thought if they would have got the onside kick, they would have gone and scored and probably gotten the 2-point conversion and probably won outright. They're obviously in bounce back mode, just a horrible second half and losing that game to Stanford after a 29-0 lead. But
can we interject? Can we interject while you're looking it over and you're going to smile here? Charles Kelly was the defensive coordinator at Florida State, and they repeatedly kept getting lit up, and Jimbo got rid of him. He did better for a little while at Alabama with Nick Saban. This ain't Alabama. And right now there's plenty of tape and plenty of examples, and yes, they're banged up. They had Travis Hunter out of the lineup some. He's back. but there's plenty out there to expose his defense. And so people have been saying that, they've been chirping that Colorado can't stop anybody. How concerned are you with that defense in the Rose Bowl not being able to stop UCLA?
Yeah, I mean, look, Colorado's defense is not very good, but UCLA's kind of had some quarterback issues. In fact,
Right.
they played Ethan Garbers last week in the game at Stanford after, it was a little bit of Colin Schlee, the MAC transfer, but mostly the true freshman Dante Moore, who's kind of been up and down, typical of a true freshman. I mean, he's a 5-star. He's really talented. He's going to be really good, but, he's prone to make mistakes at this stage of his career. And I would assume it's going to be Ethan Garbers again this week. And, I just don't think UCLA is as dynamic offensively as they have been in the past. And I just think, UCLA is a lot better defensively than they usually are. But I think Shedeur Sanders is outstanding. Now Travis Hunter is healthy. He's got a great receiver core. I like the running backs. I mean, I like Colorado's offense a lot. Don't really like their defense so much. But again, the back door will be open if we get behind the number. And so I like Colorado plus the 17.
And the number we're getting is 17. Again, we disclaim at the time we're taping it. If that goes up or down, we don't have any control of that here midweek. As the weekend approaches, the number is the number. And by the way, we're going to talk a little bit here in just a second once we're done with the picks about the whole sign stealing thing and Michigan and the controversy. I thought Deion Sanders midweek had a fantastic answer. He's had a couple of opportunities where if he wanted to be arrogant or childish or whatever, he could have been, but he's almost been a voice of reason a couple of times, including on the sign stealing thing. So we'll talk about that in a second. And they've come off a bye week here. I may be feeling you a little bit at the Rose Bowl, get some things together, and they're never out of it with Sanders gunslinging the ball, his son, Shedeur. Let's see. You'll take the 17 there. I'm going to stay in the Rocky Mountains. I'm going to stay with the team that I went with last week, and that's Colorado State. I already mentioned this, that they hung in there with UNLV, had the long field goal for the lead in the final minute, let the Rebels come to the other end in the final seconds and kick the winning field goal against Jay Norvell's team. I like Colorado State at home with Air Force. Again, boo hiss to Troy Calhoun, the coach. What is it with these coaches, Brian Edwards of VegasInsider.com and MajorWager.com? What is it with these coaches playing injury games where Calhoun tells everybody midweek that the quarterback for Air Force is not only out, but what did you say? He described it as out for a while midweek last week. He plays Saturday against Navy. We got to stop with the shenanigans. Just say that he has a chance to play. He's unlikely to play, but he has a chance to play. He declared him out early in the week, and the kid is out there right away in the early game against Navy. What's up with that?
I have no idea what's up with that. It's just awful how they'll lie to you. I mean, even I love Whittingham in general, but Whittingham, had people thinking Cam Rising was going to start against Florida. That's 8 weeks ago, 7 or 8 weeks ago. I mean, it's just crazy how dishonest they are. And and then how wild was it that because with him being upgraded, that line was all over the place. And then when Navy scores late, they go for 2. Why are you going for 2 when it's
I don't know. Just seconds left in the game, and it would have been a cover with the extra point at 10.5 or 11, and it didn't happen. So Zach Laurier is the quarterback. We suspect he's going to play. I love this kid for Colorado State, Nicolosi, because he played very well in their comeback against Boise State. He played very well in the game with Colorado early on in the year. They have a couple of receivers. Horton and the other receiver can both make plays. They're both transfers, but Braden Fowler Nicolosi has shown me something. He's got 2,200 yards passing virtually right now already this year. I will take the Rams and double figures at home. Thank you. I know Air Force is undefeated, but I think this is going to be an amped up atmosphere to an extent in Fort Collins. I think Colorado State can hang in, if not pull the upset. I will take the 12 in that matchup. Here, we both go with the Colorado team to end up on 3 Dog Thursday. Give me Colorado State 2 weeks in a row to help me out. And again, I make mention the host 7-3-2. The last 4 weeks, I've learned from Brian Edwards and others, Gary Seegers and others, how to navigate these underdogs. It's too many points for me for Colorado State getting here. A couple of honorable mentions. We did not bring up Florida State at Wake Forest. Florida State had their problems early, but beat Duke. This is an early Eastern time noon game at Winston-Salem. Wake has hung in with a couple of bigger teams like Clemson. They won ugly or lost ugly last week, but kept it close, I think, with Pitt. Any thought on a large line there? We're not handicapping it. It's a huge line for Florida State against Wake Forest in that matchup. Honorable mention. Any thought about Wake Forest hanging in at home in the ACC?
Yeah, so they've won 3 in a row against Florida State in this rivalry. But if Mitch Griffiths, to me, it's all about Mitch Griffiths, the quarterback, the starter for Wake Forest. He's been banged up the last couple of weeks, did not play. They had to start their third string quarterback last week, and it's Santiago Marucci, and he did not play well, had a couple of interceptions, but he did throw a game-winning touchdown pass, 15-yard touchdown pass with 7 seconds left to beat Pitt 21-17. Look, I think it's too many points. Wake Forest is really improved on defense. Now, they're not nearly as dynamic offensively with Hartman gone, but Mitch Griffiths he's okay. And if he's back, I would definitely lean Wake plus the 20. I mean, we saw FSU, struggle at Boston College. We don't know about Johnny Wilson's status. I know he left the game the other night, probably going to be questionable or probably all the way up to game time till we find out. I'm guessing on that, obviously midweek. But I would lean to Wake if Griffiths is upgraded later in the week. But if we don't know that for sure, then it would be a pass. But it seems like a lot of points to me.
And by the way, Jordan Travis has greatly improved. Norvell's got Florida State rolling. It's just a ton of points. It's 20.5 points. One more on the honorable mention. It'll be a ton of attention on Ohio State and Wisconsin. Wisconsin gets a bunch of points in this matchup for the game at home at Camp Randall. We don't have to handicap it. Just a quick thought there. Does Ohio State have too much firepower here or any thought on that? I know Wisconsin got the win over Illinois in comeback fashion in Champaign. We did talk about them a lot last week on 3 Dog Thursday, but they got the win. Any quick thought? Wisconsin back at home with the Buckeyes.
Well, in the summer, when you look at certain, spots, this seemed to be a really good spot for Wisconsin, at home, and with Ohio State coming off what was going to, be a game probably between unbeaten teams, and it was against Penn State. So it's a good spot for Wisconsin, but with Tanner Mordecai out, with Malusi out for the season, I still think it's Wisconsin or pass. But I didn't get to see Wisconsin's backup quarterback play last week. Obviously, they barely squeak out one against Illinois. Has been a disappointment this year. Now, I will mention that the Badgers kind of have new life now that Iowa lost. They're back in it for the Big Ten West. If Iowa were to go down again, which is very possible. So, from that standpoint, Wisconsin should be fired up to give one of their better efforts of the year. But I don't know that I can play them, but I think it's Wisconsin or pass.
All right, good enough on the honorable mention. One quick comment from you, and then we're gone. I've said a lot in interviews about the whole sign stealing thing. I mean, obviously, it's a systematic thing that Michigan has been doing. You've got this analyst who's been going to the road games, videotaping signals, and then he's the guy standing right by the defensive coordinator or the offensive coordinator revealing plays. Do you have a thought on what the Big Ten should maybe step in and do, or does the College Football Playoff Committee? I mean, wouldn't this be massive if they step in and say this is tainted, we're not taking them? To what level do you think this rises to? What's going on at Michigan, who's off this week, and it seems to be pretty damning. They've been doing this for a couple of years, and they're caught, Brian.
Yeah, I don't really care. I mean, it's kind of like the deflate gate thing. I mean, I just don't really care. I don't think it gives you that much of an advantage. And if you're doing a good job of hiding your signs and your signals and stuff, they can even mess themselves up and get confused.
And if I can interrupt, there is an argument about change your signs, do something different than what you have been doing. But at the same time, this is a hard, fast rule. You're not allowed to do this stuff. And they have systematically been doing it. And Harbaugh, I'm sorry, has to know what's going on if the guy's standing right next to the defensive coordinator and the offensive coordinator telling them to play. Deion Sanders' excellent answer was, hey, it's different in baseball. If I know a curveball's coming, I'm set as the batter. I don't have to have any other help. You still got to stop the play. And as he pointed out, when the Cowboys were rolling with Emmitt Smith, you knew the sweep was coming, but you couldn't stop it. You knew the Michael Irvin comeback was coming on a comeback route from Aikman. You couldn't stop it. Jay Novacek, you couldn't stop him on the out route. He goes, it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to stop it. Let's see if the Big Ten comes down hard on Harbaugh, who's already been in trouble, or not here quickly. They finish with Purdue, then at Penn State, Maryland, and then they host Ohio State. Does he get another suspension? Do they do this quickly? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on
Yeah.
that, but we've covered a bunch. All right, one more time by means of recap. Brian and I agree on Eastern Michigan early with Western Michigan plus the 3. Brian goes Utah in the home game Saturday afternoon in Salt Lake with Oregon. He's getting 7 midweek, 6.5 or 7. We'll give him the 7. I love at the same time Florida against Georgia, 3:30 Eastern time in Jacksonville in that rivalry game for the Gators, getting 14.5. You'll go Colorado Saturday late afternoon in the West. Prime time in the East, you will go Colorado plus the 17, and I will likewise take a Colorado team. I'll take the Rams of Colorado State against Air Force. Air Force has won 12 games in a row dating back to last year. Brian Edwards, speaking of the Ronald Reagan administration, the last time they've won 13 straight games over 2 seasons was 1984, 1985. Hello, if Air Force can win and get to 8-0, I don't know. I think Colorado State may be able to beat them. They'll keep it close, I believe, for 3 Dog Thursday. Brian, plug away on where else we can see you and read you with Vegas Insider, Major Wager, your shows, all of it.
Yeah, so picks at vegasinsider.com, a Twitter handle at VegasBEdwards, content at majorwager.com. And I'm also doing a new show. If your listeners, if they want to check it out, go to the YouTube channel for Southeastern 14, like the Southeastern Conference, and they have 14 teams. Southeastern 14. Subscribe to that YouTube channel every Thursday. A weekly pod I do with Jay Greason of the Chattanooga Times Free Press. It's called Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greason, and you can find it on the Southeastern 14 YouTube channel. Thanks for having me, TJ, and enjoyed it. And best of luck to us. And if any of your listeners are tailing us, best of luck to all of us with our picks.
Yeah, we love that with the underdogs. Brian, thank you as always. Thank you to Gary Seegers, winningcureseverything.com, and the Winning Cures YouTube page, also in podcast form, wherever you get podcasts. For Brian Edwards, I'm TJ Rives. Thank you for being with us on 3 Dog Thursday.